When we think about acts of violence, we often imagine them just happening suddenly. But is that really true? Or is there usually like a path leading up to it? Maybe signals we just don't catch? It's a really heavy question, and Michael C. Kimball's work on behaviors of concern forces us to look at it differently. Okay, let's dig into this. For this deep dive, our goal is really to help you learn to spot these signals. They can be pretty subtle, sometimes not what you'd expect at all. We want to understand why they're so important and, how communities can actually step in before something terrible happens. It's all about being informed, feeling empowered to actually see what might be going on. So when Kimball talks about behaviors of concern, what are we actually talking about? Especially the less obvious stuff. What are the things maybe you, the listener, might easily overlook?
Yeah, it's interesting because they're not always like direct threats. Often they're more like precursors, right? Early warnings. We're talking sometimes about shifts. Maybe someone becomes really withdrawn, socially isolated when that's not their norm, or maybe a sudden, really intense focus on violent stuff, like in their drawings or what they talk about, weapons maybe. But one of the most surprising ones, and Kimball points this out as really reliable, is something called leakage.
Leakage, what exactly is that?
Leakage is basically when someone makes comments, maybe directly, maybe indirectly, about harming someone or planning something violent. And it's crucial to get that these things are on a spectrum. It's rarely a big flashing sign.
Right.
And that's exactly why they get missed so often.
Yeah, makes sense. That subtlety.
Right.
That's the tricky part, isn't it? We almost expect some big, dramatic warning sign, which leads to some really unhelpful, even dangerous myths. And I think this is where it gets really interesting, breaking down those misconceptions.
Exactly. Like that common myth. Oh, if someone was really dangerous, you'd know. It would be obvious.
No.
But the fact is, these warning signs are often quiet. They might show up over time, maybe only in certain places or to certain people. We tend to look for the obvious bad guy image instead of piecing together these quieter signals.
Yeah, connecting the dots.
And then there's that other really damaging myth. People who just talk about violence never actually do anything.
The talk is cheap idea.
Precisely. And this is where understanding leakage is so critical. We often brush it off, right? Like it's just someone trying to get attention or seem tough.
Yep.
But the research, Kimball's work included, shows leakage is actually one of the most reliable indicators that someone is moving down that path. Getting that distinction is vital for you because it shifts the focus. You stop looking for a monster and start seeing potentially someone in distress, someone whose behavior is escalating, a process.
That completely changes the frame. Okay, so understanding the signs, busting the myths, that's huge. But let's talk real world. What actually happens? What's the difference when these signals are missed versus when someone does notice and acts?
Well, the consequences of missing them, they can be absolutely devastating. You just have to think about cases like Columbine. There were so many signs beforehand, writings about violence, explicit threats, but they were overlooked or not connected.
Right, scattered pieces.
Or Parkland. Long history there of troubling behavior, violent posts online, issues reported, but the communication between different groups like school and law enforcement was fragmented. No one had the full picture.
Just tragic gaps.
But, and this is important, there are powerful stories of prevention too. Like that case in Everett, Washington back in 2018, a grandmother found her grandson's journal. It detailed a plan for a school shooting. She reported it. Authorities stepped in, they intervened, and a potential tragedy was stopped before it could happen. It really hammers home that point from the source material. The difference between tragedy and prevention often lies in whether someone pays attention to behaviors of concern. Sometimes it just takes one person.
One person noticing and saying something. So, putting this all together, what does it mean for us, for you listening? How do we move from just knowing this stuff to actually doing something in our communities?
Yeah, it's got to be more than just individuals trying to be hyper-vigilant, right? It needs a systematic approach, real readiness. So first, training and awareness. Everyone needs to know what to look for: staff, students, parents, community members, and why it matters.
Not just what, but why. Okay.
Second, these multidisciplinary threat assessment teams. They're so key because, well, no single person, not a counselor, not a teacher, not police, has all the answers or sees everything.
You're doing way different viewpoints.
You need that bigger picture to really figure out the risk and, importantly, how to help. Third, you absolutely need clear, confidential ways for people to report concerns. Communication protocols. People need to feel safe speaking up.
Makes sense. Trust is huge.
Totally. And finally, follow-up. This is critical. Intervention isn't just about punishment. Often it's about support, connecting someone with resources, de-escalating the situation, getting them help.
So it's about support, not just stopping something.
Exactly. It's about addressing the underlying issues whenever possible.
Okay, it's really clear then. These behaviors of concern, they aren't random blips. They're signals, vital flags on that pathway to violence. And learning to see them, understanding them, that's really the foundation of preventing tragedy.
Absolutely. And maybe the final thought to leave with everyone, with you, is how can you help build that environment, in your own world, school, work, your neighborhood? How can you foster a culture where people feel okay noticing things, saying something, where awareness actually turns into prevention? It really comes down to listening, maybe noting things down, and having the courage to act. That's how we build safer communities together, through that kind of proactive looking out for each other.